My name is Jessica Coleman, and at 32, I never imagined I would stand in front of the most exclusive fitness empire in California as its new owner, watching my family's personal trainer pack up his office after I fired him. When I walked into that gleaming Beverly Hills gym 6 months ago to announce that I had just purchased Elite Fitness Studios and terminated his contract, the man who had enabled my family's cruelty for years looked like he had seen a ghost. The same family members who had told me I was too fat for my own brother's wedding photos now desperately needed the job I had just taken away from their golden boy trainer. But let me tell you how a girl they called hopeless became the woman who owned their entire world. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I grew up in Manhattan Beach, California, in what everyone assumed was the perfect family. My father, Robert Coleman, owned a chain of successful car dealerships across Southern California, and my mother, Patricia, spent her days organizing charity galas and maintaining her position in the social hierarchy of wealthy Orange County wives. Our house was a sprawling Mediterranean villa, just 3 blocks from the beach, with a circular driveway that could accommodate the luxury cars my father's business provided us. From the outside, we looked like we had everything money could buy. My older brother Michael was everything my parents had dreamed of in a son. Tall, athletic, and naturally charismatic, he played varsity baseball in high school and earned a business degree from USC before joining our father's company. He had inherited my father's commanding presence and my mother's social ease, making him the obvious heir to both the family business and their approval. Michael could do no wrong in their eyes, and honestly he rarely gave them reason to complain. Then there was me. While Michael was blessed with my mother's naturally lean frame and high metabolism, I had inherited my grandmother's stockier build and slower metabolism. My grandmother Elena had been a wonderful woman, warm and loving, but she had always struggled with her weight, and unfortunately, I had received her genes along with her kind heart. From elementary school onward, I was always the rounder child in family photos, the one my mother would strategically position behind others or suggest wearing dark colors that might be more flattering. The weight issues started early and only got worse as I hit puberty. While other girls in my private school were shopping for size small designer clothes, I was squeezed into large sizes that never seemed to fit quite right. My mother approached my appearance like a project that required constant management. She scheduled appointments with nutritionists, signed me up for various sports I had no interest in, and made subtle comments about my food choices at every meal. School was its own special kind of torture. Being overweight at an exclusive private academy in Manhattan Beach meant enduring constant comparisons to my classmates, most of whom came from families obsessed with appearance and status. I was smart, earning straight A's in advanced placement classes and showing particular talent in mathematics and business, but academic achievement meant nothing when you were the fat girl at a school where image was everything. The other students weren't cruel in obvious ways. Instead, they employed the sophisticated meanness that comes with privilege. I was never directly insulted, but I was consistently excluded. Party invitations somehow never reached me. Study groups were always full when I tried to join. Boys treated me like I was invisible, not worth even considering as a romantic possibility. The message was clear even though it was never explicitly stated. I didn't belong in their world of beautiful, thin, successful people. My parents' disappointment in my appearance was a constant presence in our home, though they expressed it through what they called love and concern. My mother would sigh deeply when looking at family photos, suggesting we might want to retake them at a better angle. My father made jokes about my appetite that weren't quite cruel enough to call mean, but weren't funny enough to actually be humorous. They paid for expensive personal trainers, exclusive diet programs, and even consulted with doctors about potential medical interventions, all while insisting they just wanted me to be healthy and happy. The irony was that I wasn't particularly unhealthy, aside from being overweight. I walked regularly, I didn't eat significantly more than anyone else in my family, and my blood work always came back normal during annual checkups. But in my family's world, health wasn't the issue. Appearance was everything, and I was failing to meet their standards in the most visible way possible. High school was when the family's disappointment in me began to affect their social standing. Other parents would make comments about how different Michael and I looked, sometimes implying that perhaps I was adopted or had different fathers. My mother's friends would offer unsolicited advice about teenage weight loss, sharing stories of their own daughters' successful transformations, as if I weren't standing right there listening to every word. During my senior year, when Michael was already working for my father and dating Amanda, the daughter of another wealthy family, the contrast between us became even more pronounced. Michael and Amanda looked like they belonged on magazine covers, two beautiful people living the California dream. Meanwhile, I was struggling to find a prom dress that didn't make me look completely ridiculous and avoiding most social events where I would inevitably be photographed next to my glamorous family members. College provided a temporary escape from the constant scrutiny. I chose Northwestern University, partly because of their excellent business program, but mostly because it was far enough from California that I could reinvent myself away from my family's expectations. For 4 years, I threw myself into academics and discovered that I had a natural talent for business strategy and financial analysis. I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in business administration and a minor in economics, earning recognition for my senior thesis on market disruption in traditional industries. During college, I also discovered that being valued for my intelligence rather than my appearance was revolutionary for my self-esteem. Professors respected my insights, classmates sought my help with complex assignments, and I began to see myself as someone with genuine value beyond my physical appearance. I even lost some weight naturally, not through any dramatic diet or exercise program, but simply through the stress and activity of college life, combined with dining hall food that was less rich than my mother's elaborate home-cooked meals. When I graduated and moved back to California, I hoped things might be different. I was 22, more confident, slightly thinner, and armed with impressive academic credentials that I thought might finally earn my parents' respect. My father offered me a position at Coleman Automotive, and I was eager to prove myself in the family business. I had dreams of implementing some of the innovative strategies I had learned about in business school, perhaps expanding into new markets or developing more efficient operational systems. But returning home meant returning to old dynamics and familiar disappointments. Within weeks, I had gained back the weight I had lost in college, partly due to my mother's rich cooking, and partly due to the stress of being back in an environment where my appearance was constantly scrutinized. My parents' reaction to my homecoming was polite but lukewarm. They were proud of my academic achievements in an abstract way, but their focus remained on what they saw as my primary flaw. The family business proved to be another source of frustration. While my father had promised me meaningful responsibilities, I found myself relegated to administrative tasks that didn't utilize any of the skills I had developed in college. Michael, meanwhile, was learning every aspect of the operation and being groomed for eventual ownership. When I suggested new marketing strategies or operational improvements, my ideas were politely received but rarely implemented. It became clear that my role in the family business was more about giving me something to do than actually contributing to the company's success. Dating was virtually impossible under the constant weight of family expectations and my own insecurities. The few men I met through work or social events seemed nice enough initially, but relationships never progressed beyond casual dating. I began to suspect that my family's reputation and my own appearance made me an undesirable romantic partner in our social circle. My mother would occasionally suggest men she thought might be good matches for me, but these suggestions were always accompanied by subtle implications that I would need to lose weight first to have any real chance of success. The isolation was perhaps the worst part of those years. Michael was busy with his career and relationship, my parents were absorbed in their social obligations, and I found myself spending most evenings alone in my apartment, a small condo my father had helped me purchase in a nice but not spectacular part of town. I threw myself into work, hoping that professional success might earn the family recognition I craved, but even my genuine contributions to the business were overshadowed by concerns about my appearance at company events and client meetings. I began seeing a therapist during this time, a kind woman named Dr. Martinez, who helped me understand that my worth wasn't determined by my family's approval or society's beauty standards. Our sessions were the first place I felt truly heard and valued for who I was rather than what I looked like. Dr. Martinez helped me recognize that my family's treatment of me was emotionally abusive, even if it wasn't intentionally cruel. She encouraged me to develop interests and relationships outside of my family's influence, but that was easier said than done when your entire life had been structured around seeking their approval. 2 years after college, Michael announced his engagement to Amanda. The engagement party was held at my parents' house, a lavish affair with over 200 guests from their social circle. I spent weeks preparing for the event, getting my hair and makeup professionally done, and purchasing an expensive dress that I hoped would help me fit in better with the beautiful people who would be attending. But even with all that preparation, I felt awkward and out of place among the perfectly groomed guests. The engagement photos that were taken that night became a source of particular pain for my family. In group shots, my presence seemed to disrupt the aesthetic harmony they were trying to achieve. I could see my mother's frustration as she tried to position family members in ways that would minimize my visibility, and I watched Amanda's mother whisper suggestions about camera angles that might be more flattering overall. The professional photographer, clearly experienced in dealing with such situations, took dozens of shots from different angles, but the underlying problem remained: I didn't fit the image they wanted to present. When the official engagement photos were published in the local society magazine, I noticed that I appeared in only one of the 5 photos they had selected, and in that image, I was partially obscured by other family members. Michael and Amanda looked radiant, my parents looked proud and distinguished, and I looked like exactly what I was, the family member they wished they could edit out entirely. The wedding planning process stretched over 18 months, and it became increasingly clear that my appearance was considered a significant concern by everyone involved. Amanda's family hired a wedding planner who specialized in high-end society weddings, and every detail was carefully orchestrated to create the perfect visual presentation. The venue was an exclusive resort in Napa Valley, the flowers were imported from specific farms in Holland, and the guest list read like a who's who of Southern California's elite families. My role in the wedding was carefully managed from the beginning. While Amanda's 3 sisters were asked to be bridesmaids, I was given the honorary title of Maid of Honor, which everyone understood meant I would have special duties but wouldn't necessarily appear in all the formal wedding party photos. The bride's side of the wedding party consisted of 5 women who looked like they could have stepped out of a fashion magazine, all tall, thin, and effortlessly elegant. I was provided with a specially designed dress that was intended to be complementary to the bridesmaids' dresses, while being more forgiving for my body type. As the wedding date approached, the comments about my appearance became less subtle and more frequent.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. My mother began making suggestions about crash diets that might help me lose weight quickly before the ceremony. Amanda's mother mentioned a spa retreat that specialized in rapid weight loss for special events. Even my father, who usually avoided direct comments about my appearance, wondered aloud whether I might consider seeing a nutritionist who had helped several of his business associates' wives achieve dramatic results. The final dress fitting took place 3 weeks before the wedding, and it was a disaster. Despite my best efforts to lose weight through various diet plans and exercise programs, I had actually gained a few pounds due to the stress of the wedding preparations and the constant scrutiny of my appearance. The dress that had been ordered based on measurements taken months earlier was now uncomfortably tight, and the seamstress was unable to make the necessary alterations without completely reconstructing the garment. Standing in that fitting room, struggling to zip up a dress that clearly didn't fit, while my mother and Amanda's mother exchanged worried glances in the mirror's reflection, I felt smaller and more humiliated than I had ever felt in my life. The seamstress was professional but clearly frustrated. Amanda was trying to be understanding while obviously concerned about how this would affect her wedding photos, and my mother was making increasingly desperate suggestions about emergency alterations or replacement dresses. 2 weeks before the wedding, during what was supposed to be a final planning meeting at my parents' house, the conversation took a turn that would change my relationship with my family forever. Amanda's mother had brought the proof shots from the engagement photographer, who had also been hired to shoot the wedding, and she was reviewing the planned photo lineup with my mother and Amanda. I walked into the living room just as I heard Amanda's mother say, "I think we need to be realistic about the family photos. Jessica is a lovely girl, but she's going to stand out in ways that might detract from the overall aesthetic we're trying to achieve." My mother's response was even worse. "I know I've been worried about the same thing. Maybe we can limit her to just a few family shots and keep her out of the main wedding party photos." Amanda, to her credit, looked uncomfortable with this conversation, but she didn't speak up to defend me.
Instead, she suggested what she probably thought was a compromise. Maybe Jessica could help coordinate things behind the scenes during the photo sessions. That way she's still involved but not necessarily in every shot. That was the moment I realized that my own family saw me as a problem to be managed rather than a person to be celebrated. I had spent my entire life trying to earn their love and acceptance, and now I understood that their approval was conditional on my ability to meet their aesthetic standards. No amount of academic achievement, professional success, or personal growth would ever be enough to overcome their fundamental disappointment in my appearance. I didn't say anything in that moment. I simply turned around and walked out of the house, got in my car, and drove home to my apartment. That night, I called Dr. Martinez and scheduled an emergency session. For the first time in my life, I was ready to acknowledge that my family's treatment of me wasn't something I could fix by losing weight or trying harder to please them. Their love was conditional, and those conditions were impossible for me to meet while maintaining any sense of self-worth or dignity. Dr. Martinez helped me understand that I had a choice to make. I could continue trying to earn approval that would never come, or I could begin building a life based on my own values and goals rather than their expectations. It was a terrifying prospect because my entire identity had been built around being the disappointing daughter who was always trying to do better. But it was also liberating to consider that I might have worth beyond my family's narrow definition of success. The wedding took place as scheduled, and I attended as planned, wearing a dress that fit properly after emergency alterations and trying to maintain my dignity throughout a day that felt like a celebration of everything I wasn't. The photos were beautiful, featuring my gorgeous family members and their equally attractive friends, with me appearing in only the most necessary family shots. Michael and Amanda looked perfect together, my parents glowed with pride, and I smiled for the cameras while feeling completely disconnected from the joy everyone else was experiencing. But something had changed in me during those final weeks of wedding preparation. The humiliation of being seen as a problem to be managed had crystallized into something harder and more focused determination. I was done trying to shrink myself to fit into their world. Instead, I was going to build my own world, one where my value wasn't determined by my dress size or my photogenic qualities. The week after the wedding, I made several significant decisions that would set the course for everything that happened next. First, I resigned from my position at Coleman Automotive, despite my father's protests and my mother's concerns about what I would do for work. Second, I used the savings I had accumulated over 2 years of working for the family business to enroll in an intensive business development program that focused on entrepreneurship and investment strategies. Third, I began seriously exploring business opportunities that would allow me to build something entirely my own. The program I enrolled in was designed for experienced professionals who wanted to transition from traditional employment to business ownership. It was an intensive 6-month course that covered everything from market analysis and competitive positioning to financing structures and operational management. Most of my classmates were men in their 40s and 50s who were looking to start their own consulting firms or buy existing businesses, but I was determined to prove that I belonged in that environment despite my age and lack of traditional business ownership experience. For the first time in my adult life, I was in an environment where my physical appearance was completely irrelevant to my success. The instructors evaluated students based on the quality of their business plans, the depth of their market research, and their ability to present compelling investment proposals. My academic background and analytical skills served me well, and I quickly established myself as one of the top performers in the program. The business plan I developed during the course focused on the fitness industry, partly because of my personal experience with that world, and partly because I had identified what I believed were significant market inefficiencies in how fitness services were delivered to different demographic groups. Most gyms and fitness centers were designed to appeal to people who were already in good shape and comfortable with traditional exercise environments. There was a huge underserved market of people who were intimidated by typical fitness facilities or who had specific needs that weren't being met by mainstream fitness businesses. My research revealed that the fitness industry was experiencing rapid growth, particularly in premium segments that catered to affluent clients who wanted personalized service and exclusive environments. However, most of these businesses were owned by former athletes or fitness enthusiasts who understood exercise and training but had limited business expertise. I saw an opportunity to apply sophisticated business strategies to an industry that was still relatively unsophisticated in terms of operations, marketing, and customer retention. The specific opportunity that caught my attention was Elite Fitness Studios, a small chain of high-end personal training facilities in Beverly Hills and West Hollywood. The company had been founded by Marcus Thompson, a former professional football player who had built a successful personal training business catering to celebrities and wealthy professionals. Marcus was an excellent trainer and had developed a loyal client base, but he lacked the business skills necessary to expand the company or maximize its profitability. Elite Fitness Studios operated 3 locations, employed 12 personal trainers, and generated approximately $2 million in annual revenue. On the surface, it appeared to be a successful business, but my analysis revealed several significant problems. The company's operational costs were too high, their pricing strategy was inconsistent, they had no systematic approach to marketing or client acquisition, and they were heavily dependent on Marcus's personal relationships with clients rather than building institutional value. More importantly for my personal situation, I discovered that Marcus Thompson was my family's personal trainer. He had been working with my parents and Michael for over 3 years, coming to their house twice a week to lead workout sessions in the elaborate home gym my father had built in our garage. Marcus had witnessed countless conversations about my weight and appearance, had heard my family's frustrations about my inability to achieve their desired results, and had been present during many of the discussions about how my appearance might affect family photos and social events. Learning that Marcus was connected to my family added a personal element to what had started as purely a business opportunity. Here was a chance to not only build my own successful company but to gain control over someone who had been complicit in my family's treatment of me. Marcus had never been directly cruel to me, but he had also never spoken up when my parents made hurtful comments about my appearance in his presence. He had accepted their money while listening to them discuss me like I was a problem to be solved rather than a person deserving of basic respect. I spent months developing a comprehensive acquisition strategy for Elite Fitness Studios. I analyzed their financial statements, studied their client base, evaluated their competition, and developed detailed plans for operational improvements that could dramatically increase the company's profitability. I also began building relationships with potential investors who might be interested in backing my acquisition of the business. The financing piece of the puzzle was the most challenging aspect of my plan. I had some savings from my years working at my father's company, but not nearly enough to purchase a business generating $2 million in annual revenue. I needed to convince experienced investors that I had the skills and vision necessary to successfully acquire and operate a fitness business, despite having no direct experience in that industry. My breakthrough came through Sandra Walsh, a venture capitalist who specialized in funding women-owned businesses in traditionally male-dominated industries. Sandra had built her own investment firm after years of being overlooked by traditional venture capital firms, and she was particularly interested in supporting women who were challenging established business models in service industries. When I presented my analysis of Elite Fitness Studios and my plans for expanding the business, Sandra was immediately intrigued. She saw the same market opportunity I had identified, and she was impressed by the thoroughness of my research and the sophistication of my financial projections. More importantly, she understood the personal motivation that was driving my interest in this particular business. "This isn't just about making money for you," she observed during our third meeting. "You have a personal stake in proving something to people who have underestimated you. That kind of motivation can be incredibly powerful in business, as long as you can channel it productively rather than destructively." Sandra's investment group agreed to provide the financing necessary to acquire Elite Fitness Studios, contingent on my ability to negotiate acceptable terms with Marcus Thompson and demonstrate that I could successfully transition into the role of business owner. The negotiation process took several months, during which I had to convince Marcus that selling his business to me was in his best interest while also positioning myself as someone capable of taking over his life's work. Marcus's initial reaction to my acquisition offer was skeptical and somewhat condescending. He knew me only as the overweight daughter from one of his client families, and he clearly doubted that I had the experience or expertise necessary to run his business. Our early meetings were tense, with Marcus questioning every aspect of my business plan and expressing concerns about what would happen to his clients and employees under new ownership. But as our discussions continued and I was able to demonstrate my understanding of his business's strengths and weaknesses, Marcus began to take me more seriously. I showed him detailed analysis of his operational inefficiencies, presented him with strategies for increasing revenue that he had never considered, and outlined expansion plans that could significantly increase the value of what he had built. Gradually, he began to see me not as an inexperienced outsider but as someone who might actually be able to take his business to the next level. The final negotiation took place over a series of meetings in Marcus's Beverly Hills studio, the same location where he had trained my family for years. Sitting in that familiar space, discussing the terms of a deal that would make me his employer, felt surreal and incredibly satisfying. This was the same man who had listened to my parents discuss my weight problems without ever suggesting that their approach might be harmful or inappropriate. Now he was going to work for me, and his financial security would depend on my success as a business owner. We reached an agreement that gave me ownership of all 3 Elite Fitness Studios locations, along with the client contracts, employee relationships, and business systems Marcus had developed. Marcus would continue as head trainer for a transition period of 6 months, during which time I would learn the operational details of running a fitness business, and he would help introduce me to key clients and staff members. After the transition period, Marcus would be free to start a new business or seek other employment, but he would be bound by a non-compete agreement that prevented him from taking Elite Fitness clients with him. The day I signed the papers to purchase Elite Fitness Studios was one of the most satisfying days of my life. I was now the owner of a successful business, the employer of people who had previously seen me as an unsuccessful person, and in control of a company that served the exact demographic that had always made me feel inadequate. More importantly, I had proved to myself that I was capable of achieving something significant through my own intelligence and determination, regardless of what my family thought about my appearance or my potential, but owning the business was only the beginning of my plan. I had bigger ambitions for Elite Fitness Studios, and I had very specific ideas about how I wanted to transform both the company and the industry it served. The personal satisfaction of buying Marcus's business was just the first step in a much larger strategy that would eventually give me the power to completely reshape the dynamics between myself and my family. I had learned that success wasn't about earning approval from people who were determined not to give it. Success was about building something so impressive and valuable that approval became irrelevant. I was done being the disappointing daughter who was always trying to measure up to impossible standards. Instead, I was going to become the daughter who owned businesses, employed people, and commanded respect through achievement rather than appearance. The transformation had begun, but the real revenge was still to come. Taking over Elite Fitness Studios was like stepping into a world I had observed from the outside my entire life but never truly understood from within. The first week of ownership was a whirlwind of meetings with staff, reviewing client files, and learning the intricate details of running a business that operated on relationships, reputation, and results. Marcus had built something impressive, but as I dug deeper into the operations, I realized just how much potential was being left on the table. The 3 locations were beautiful facilities, each designed with the kind of understated luxury that appealed to Beverly Hills clientele. Polished hardwood floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, state-of-the-art equipment, and private training rooms that felt more like upscale living spaces than traditional gyms. The West Hollywood location featured a meditation garden and juice bar, while the Beverly Hills flagship included a spa area with massage therapy and recovery services. The newest location in Brentwood had been designed specifically for group classes and specialized programs. What struck me immediately was how intimidating these spaces would be for anyone who didn't already feel confident about their fitness level or appearance. Everything was designed for people who looked good in expensive athletic wear, who were comfortable being seen sweating in public, and who had the kind of natural body confidence that comes from never having been made to feel ashamed of their physical presence. These were spaces for people like my family, not for people like me. The client roster read like a directory of Los Angeles entertainment industry professionals, successful business executives, and wealthy socialites. I recognized many of the names from society pages and entertainment magazines. These were people who hired personal trainers not because they struggled with weight or fitness, but because maintaining their appearance was part of their professional and social obligations. They came to elite fitness studios to fine-tune already impressive physiques, to prepare for red carpet events, or to maintain the kind of effortless perfection that their lifestyles demanded. Marcus had done an excellent job of recruiting talented trainers who understood this clientele. Each of the 12 trainers on staff had impressive credentials, either as former professional athletes, certified specialists in areas like rehabilitation or sports performance, or experienced professionals with established client followings. They were all physically impressive themselves, the kind of people who inspired confidence simply by walking into a room. But as I spent more time observing the day-to-day operations, I began to see the limitations of the current business model. Elite Fitness Studios was essentially a collection of individual training practices operating under one roof, with Marcus serving as the central figure who maintained relationships with the most important clients. Revenue was generated primarily through individual training sessions that averaged $200 per hour, with some specialized services commanding even higher rates. The problem was that this model had natural limits to growth and profitability. There were only so many hours in the day, only so many high-paying clients in the immediate geographic area, and too much dependence on the personal relationships that Marcus and a few key trainers had developed over years of working in the industry. If any of the top trainers decided to leave and start their own practices, they could potentially take significant revenue with them. I spent my first month as owner conducting what I privately called reconnaissance missions, observing training sessions, talking with clients and staff, and identifying opportunities for improvement that wouldn't disrupt the successful elements of the existing business. I learned that many clients had been working with the same trainer for years and had developed personal relationships that went beyond the professional. Some trainers were invited to clients' social events, others provided informal life coaching along with fitness instruction, and several had become trusted members of their clients' inner circles. This level of personal service was clearly valuable to the clients, but it also created inefficiencies and missed opportunities for the business. Trainers were spending unpaid time answering client texts and phone calls, providing advice on nutrition and lifestyle issues that could have been monetized through additional services, and functioning as informal therapists for clients who were dealing with stress, relationship problems, or career challenges. I also noticed that the current client base, while lucrative, was relatively small and demographically narrow. Elite Fitness Studios served perhaps 300 active clients across all 3 locations, with the majority being affluent white professionals between the ages of 30 and 50. There were virtually no clients who looked like I had looked before starting my business ownership journey, no one who appeared to be struggling with significant weight issues, and no programs designed for people who might be intimidated by the luxury fitness environment. This observation led me to what I believed was the biggest opportunity for growth and differentiation in the fitness industry. There was an enormous underserved market of people who wanted high-quality personal training and fitness services, but who felt excluded from traditional upscale fitness facilities. These were successful professionals who could afford premium services, but who didn't feel comfortable in environments designed for people who already looked like fitness models. I began developing a comprehensive expansion strategy that would allow Elite Fitness Studios to serve multiple market segments while maintaining the exclusive reputation that made it successful with its existing clientele. The key was creating separate program tracks and service offerings that could operate within the same facilities but provide different experiences for different types of clients. The first element of my expansion strategy was developing what I called the Transformation Program, a comprehensive 12-week intensive program designed specifically for clients who had significant weight loss goals or who were returning to fitness after extended periods of inactivity. This program would combine personal training, nutritional counseling, lifestyle coaching, and psychological support in a holistic approach that addressed all the factors that contribute to successful long-term health and fitness improvements. Unlike the typical Elite Fitness Studios experience, which assumed clients already had basic fitness knowledge and body confidence, the Transformation Program would be designed for people who needed education, encouragement, and a supportive environment where they could learn and improve without feeling judged or intimidated. Sessions would be scheduled during off-peak hours to provide privacy, and participants would have access to specialized equipment and facilities designed for their specific needs. The second element was expanding the corporate wellness services that Elite Fitness Studios offered to local businesses. I had identified dozens of companies in the Los Angeles area that provided gym memberships or basic wellness programs for their employees, but weren't offering the kind of high-quality personalized fitness services that could really make a difference in employee health and productivity. By developing corporate packages that brought elite fitness trainers to company offices or provided exclusive group classes for employees, we could tap into a completely new revenue stream while building relationships with influential business leaders. The third element was creating a comprehensive online presence that could serve clients who weren't geographically located near our physical facilities. Many of the current clients traveled frequently for work or maintained residences in multiple cities, and they had expressed interest in being able to access elite fitness services remotely. By developing virtual personal training programs, online nutrition counseling, and digital fitness tracking tools, we could expand our market reach while increasing the lifetime value of existing clients. But the most important element of my expansion strategy was personal. I was going to use the transformation program to address my own fitness and health goals, not because I believed my worth was determined by my appearance, but because I wanted to prove that sustainable change was possible when approached with the right combination of expertise, support, and commitment. I was going to become the living advertisement for what elite fitness studios could achieve with clients who had been written off by other fitness programs. Working with Dr. Martinez, I had come to understand that my relationship with food and exercise had been shaped by years of shame, criticism, and failed attempts at quick fixes that were designed to please other people rather than create lasting health improvements. Every diet I had tried was focused on rapid weight loss for a specific event or goal, rather than developing sustainable habits that could be maintained long-term. Every exercise program I had attempted was chosen based on what other people thought I should be doing, rather than activities I actually enjoyed or found meaningful. The transformation program I designed for myself was different. Instead of focusing primarily on weight loss, it emphasized building strength, increasing energy, improving mood, and developing a positive relationship with physical activity. Instead of restrictive diets that eliminated entire food groups or required constant calorie counting, it focused on learning to prepare nutritious meals that were satisfying and sustainable. Instead of punishing workouts that left me feeling defeated and sore, it incorporated activities that were challenging but enjoyable. Most importantly, instead of measuring success solely through changes in my appearance, the program tracked improvements in measurable health indicators like cardiovascular fitness, strength benchmarks, sleep quality, stress levels, and overall energy. The goal wasn't to become thin enough to satisfy my family's aesthetic preferences, but to become strong and healthy enough to feel confident and capable in all areas of my life. I hired Sarah Kim, one of Elite Fitness Studio's most experienced trimmers, to work with me personally throughout the program. Sarah had a background in rehabilitation therapy and specialized in working with clients who were recovering from injuries or dealing with chronic health conditions. Unlike many personal trainers who focused primarily on helping already fit clients achieve incremental improvements, Sarah understood how to work with people who were starting from a place of physical and emotional challenges. Sarah's approach was methodical and patient. We began with comprehensive fitness testing to establish baseline measurements for strength, flexibility, cardiovascular fitness, and body composition. Instead of focusing on the numbers that had always been sources of shame for me, like my weight or clothing size, we tracked metrics that reflected genuine health improvements, like how many push-ups I could do, how long I could walk at an incline, or how quickly my heart rate recovered after exercise. The exercise program Sarah designed for me was unlike anything I had tried before. Instead of generic workout routines, copied from magazines, or trendy fitness classes that assumed everyone had the same abilities and interests, my program was completely customized based on my physical capabilities, time constraints, and personal preferences. We started with basic strength training exercises that built foundational muscle and improved my posture, added cardiovascular activities that I actually enjoyed like hiking and swimming, and incorporated flexibility and mobility work that helped address years of sitting at desks and feeling uncomfortable in my own body. What surprised me most about working with Sarah was how much I enjoyed the process of getting stronger and more capable. For the first time in my life, exercise wasn't about punishment for eating too much or desperate attempts to change my appearance quickly enough to satisfy other people. Instead, it became about celebrating what my body could do and gradually expanding those capabilities through consistent effort and proper guidance. The nutritional component of my personal transformation was handled by Rebecca Torres, a registered dietitian who specialized in helping people develop sustainable eating patterns rather than following restrictive diets. Rebecca's philosophy was that any nutritional plan that couldn't be maintained for life wasn't worth pursuing, and that the goal should be learning to fuel your body properly for energy, health, and satisfaction, rather than trying to eat as little as possible to achieve rapid weight loss. Working with Rebecca, I learned to plan and prepare meals that were nutritious, satisfying, and realistic given my busy schedule and social obligations. Instead of eliminating foods I enjoyed, I learned to incorporate them in appropriate portions as part of an overall eating pattern that supported my health goals. Instead of feeling guilty about every food choice, I developed the knowledge and confidence to make decisions that aligned with my priorities without requiring constant vigilance or self-denial. The psychological support component of my transformation program was provided by Dr. Martinez, who helped me work through the emotional baggage I had accumulated over decades of being criticized for my appearance. Through our sessions, I began to understand how my family's treatment of me had affected not just my relationship with food and exercise, but my overall sense of self-worth and my beliefs about what I deserved in life. Dr. Martinez helped me recognize that my desire to prove myself through business success was healthy and motivating, but that it needed to be balanced with self-acceptance and genuine self-care. She supported my goals of building a successful company and demonstrating my capabilities to people who had underestimated me, but she also helped me ensure that my motivation was coming from a place of strength rather than a need for external validation. As I progressed through my personal transformation program, I began implementing the expanded service offerings at Elite Fitness Studios. The first new transformation program clients were people I had met through business networking events, professional associations, and social connections, who had expressed interest in working with personal trainers, but felt intimidated by traditional fitness environments. One of my first transformation program clients was Linda Rodriguez, a successful real estate attorney who had gained weight during a difficult divorce and custody battle.
Linda was intelligent, accomplished, and confident in her professional life, but she felt self-conscious about her appearance and hadn't exercised regularly in over 2 years. She was exactly the type of client that Elite Fitness Studios had never served before, but who could benefit enormously from the right kind of support and expertise. Working with Linda, I realized how many successful professionals were dealing with similar challenges to the ones I had faced. They were competent, capable people who had achieved significant success in their careers, but who felt defeated and frustrated when it came to managing their health and fitness. They had tried various diet and exercise programs without success, often because those programs weren't designed for people with demanding careers, complex schedules, and limited time for trial and error approaches. The transformation program's comprehensive approach was perfect for clients like Linda. Instead of just providing workout routines and hoping for the best, we addressed all the factors that had contributed to her current situation and all the obstacles that might prevent her from achieving her goals. We worked around her travel schedule, incorporated stress management techniques that helped her cope with professional demands, and developed meal planning strategies that worked with her lifestyle rather than requiring her to completely restructure her daily routine. Within 6 weeks, Linda had lost 15 pounds, but more importantly, she had gained energy, confidence, and a sense of control over her health that had been missing for years. She began recommending the transformation program to friends and colleagues, and word spread quickly through professional networks about the unique services Elite Fitness Studios was now offering. As the transformation program grew, I began to see how this expansion was differentiating Elite Fitness Studios from other upscale fitness facilities in Los Angeles. We were still serving our original clientele of entertainment industry professionals and wealthy socialites who wanted to maintain their already impressive physiques, but we were also developing a reputation as the place that could help accomplished people achieve dramatic health and fitness improvements regardless of their starting point. This dual market approach was proving to be incredibly profitable. The transformation program clients paid premium rates for the comprehensive services they received, and they were typically much more committed to long-term engagement than traditional personal training clients.
Instead of working with a trainer for a few months and then moving on, transformation program participants often continued with various elite fitness services for years, upgrading to different programs as their needs and goals evolved. The corporate wellness expansion was also exceeding my projections. I had initially thought that companies might be hesitant to invest in premium. Yay! But I discovered that forward-thinking businesses were eager to offer benefits that would help them attract and retain top talent in competitive industries. The corporate programs we developed provided significant value to employees while creating steady, predictable revenue streams for elite fitness studios. The online services component was the most challenging to develop, but also the most scalable. By creating virtual personal training programs and digital nutrition counseling services, we were able to serve clients across the country and even internationally. Several of our existing clients who divided their time between Los Angeles and other cities became early adopters of these services, and their success stories helped attract new clients who might never have considered working with a Los Angeles-based fitness company. 6 months after implementing my expansion strategy, Elite Fitness Studios had increased revenue by 40% while maintaining the high service quality and exclusive reputation that had made the original business successful. We had added 8 new staff members, including additional trainers, a full-time nutritionist, a business development coordinator, and customer service representatives who managed the online programs and corporate accounts. But the most satisfying aspect of the business transformation was seeing how the expanded services were changing lives for people who had previously felt excluded from high-quality fitness and wellness programs. The transformation program had helped dozens of successful professionals achieve health and fitness goals that had seemed impossible when they started. The corporate wellness programs were improving employee satisfaction and productivity for several major companies. The online services were reaching people in smaller cities and rural areas who had never had access to the kind of expertise we provided. As my own physical transformation progressed, I began to feel more confident and capable in ways that went far beyond my appearance. The strength training had improved my posture and energy levels, making me feel more commanding and authoritative in business meetings and professional situations. The cardiovascular fitness improvements had increased my stamina and mental clarity, allowing me to work longer hours without feeling exhausted. The nutritional changes had stabilized my mood and energy levels throughout the day, making me more effective and focused in all areas of my life. But perhaps most importantly, the process of achieving difficult goals through consistent effort and expert guidance had proven to myself that I was capable of far more than I had previously believed. Every workout that challenged me to lift heavier weights or exercise longer than I thought possible reinforced my confidence in my ability to overcome obstacles and achieve ambitious objectives. Every meal that I planned and prepared according to my nutritional goals demonstrated my capacity for discipline and self-care. This growing confidence began to affect how I interacted with my family and how I responded to their ongoing criticism and disappointment. When my mother made subtle comments about my appearance or my father questioned my business decisions, I found myself less affected by their opinions and more focused on the objective evidence of my success. I was building a profitable business, improving my health, and creating opportunities for other people to achieve their goals. Their approval was no longer necessary for me to feel good about my accomplishments. The change in my family's attitude toward me was gradual but noticeable. As Elite Fitness Studios grew and gained recognition in Los Angeles business and social circles, my parents began to hear positive comments about my company from their friends and business associates. The same people who had once whispered about my appearance at social events were now asking my parents about how they could access the services their successful daughter was providing. My brother Michael, who had always been the family's golden child, began asking me for business advice as he struggled with challenges in his role at my father's company. The automotive industry was facing disruptions from electric vehicles and changing consumer preferences, and Michael was discovering that his natural charm and family connections weren't sufficient to navigate complex strategic decisions. Even Amanda, my sister-in-law, who had been complicit in the wedding photo discussions that had been so hurtful, began reaching out to learn about the transformation program services. She had gained weight after having her second child and was struggling to return to her pre-pregnancy fitness level, despite working with several different trainers and trying various diet programs. But the most significant change in family dynamics came when my parents decided they needed to find a new personal trainer. Marcus Thompson had been working with them for over 3 years, but his contract with them was set to expire, and they had heard about the impressive results that Elite Fitness Studios was achieving with its expanded programs. They were curious about whether the services I was now providing might be more effective than their current arrangement. When my mother first approached me about the possibility of my parents becoming Elite Fitness Studios clients, I felt a mixture of satisfaction and apprehension. This would be the ultimate test of how much our family relationships had changed, and whether my parents were genuinely ready to see me as a successful business owner rather than the disappointing daughter who had always failed to meet their expectations. The conversation took place at my parents' house during one of our monthly family dinners, events I had continued attending despite the ongoing tensions because I wanted to maintain some connection with Michael and his children, my niece and nephew who I adored. My mother brought up the subject carefully, clearly unsure how I would respond to their interest in becoming my clients. "Jessica, we've been hearing wonderful things about your business from several people," she began, her tone more respectful than I was accustomed to hearing from her. "The Hendersons were telling us about the amazing results Joan achieved with your program, and Dr. Peterson mentioned that several of his colleagues have been very impressed with your corporate wellness services." The Hendersons were longtime friends of my parents, who moved in the same social circles, and Joan Henderson was a woman in her 50s, who had struggled with weight issues for years before joining the transformation program. Dr. Peterson was my father's longtime friend and golfing partner, whose medical practice had contracted with Elite Fitness Studios to provide wellness services for his staff. Hearing that these people had been praising my work to my parents was gratifying in a way I hadn't expected. "We were wondering," my mother continued, "whether you might have space in your program for 2 more clients. Marcus has been fine, but we're not seeing the kind of results we had hoped for, and we're interested in trying a more comprehensive approach." My father, who had remained silent during my mother's careful inquiry, finally spoke up. "We want to be clear that this would be a strictly business arrangement," he said, his voice carrying the same formal tone he used in professional settings. "We understand that you run a successful operation, and we're prepared to pay your standard rates for premium services." Their request created a complex emotional situation for me. Part of me was tempted to refuse, to tell them that Elite Fitness Studios was too exclusive for clients who had spent years criticizing my appearance and fitness level. Part of me wanted to demand an apology for all the hurtful comments and embarrassing situations they had put me through before I would even consider working with them. But the business owner in me recognized this as an opportunity that went beyond personal satisfaction or revenge. My parents were well connected in Los Angeles social and business circles, and having them as satisfied clients could lead to significant referrals and business development opportunities. More importantly, successfully helping them achieve their fitness goals would demonstrate conclusively that I had built something valuable and effective, something that even my most critical family members couldn't dismiss or minimize. After considering their request for several days, I agreed to meet with them for an initial consultation to discuss their goals and determine whether the Elite Fitness Studios programs would be appropriate for their needs. I insisted that this meeting take place at the Beverly Hills facility during regular business hours, just like any other potential client consultation. I wanted to establish from the beginning that this would indeed be a professional relationship with clear boundaries and expectations. The consultation meeting was unlike any interaction I had ever had with my parents. Instead of being the disappointing daughter seeking their approval, I was the successful business owner evaluating whether they would be good clients for my company. I interviewed them about their health history, their previous experiences with fitness programs, their goals and expectations, and their willingness to commit to the time and effort required for successful results. My parents, who were accustomed to being the ones in positions of authority and control, seemed somewhat uncomfortable with this role reversal. They answered my questions respectfully and provided the information I requested, but I could see them struggling to adjust to being evaluated rather than doing the evaluating. For the first time in my life, I held the power in our relationship, and they needed something from me that they couldn't get elsewhere. After reviewing their consultation information and discussing their situation with Sarah Kim and Rebecca Torres, I agreed to accept my parents as transformation program clients. However, I established strict professional boundaries that would govern our interactions throughout their participation in the program. They would work with Elite Fitness Studios staff members, rather than directly with me. They would follow the same program protocols as all other clients, and their progress would be evaluated using the same objective metrics we used with everyone else. The day my parents began their transformation program was one of the most surreal experiences of my life. Watching them arrive at Elite Fitness Studios as paying clients, checking in at the front desk like any other customers, and following the instructions provided by my staff members felt like a complete inversion of every family dynamic I had grown up with. Sarah Kim, who was assigned as their primary trainer, treated them with the same professional courtesy and expertise she provided to all her clients, but without any special deference to their wealth or social status. Rebecca Torres evaluated their nutritional habits with the same objective analysis she used with everyone else, identifying areas for improvement without being influenced by their expectations or previous approaches to diet and exercise. Within the first month of their program, my parents began achieving results that surprised everyone, including themselves. My father, who had struggled with high blood pressure and elevated cholesterol despite taking medication, saw improvements in both conditions as he lost weight and increased his cardiovascular fitness. My mother, who had complained for years about low energy and joint pain, began feeling more energetic and mobile as she built strength and improved her flexibility. But the most significant change was in how they talked about fitness and health, both with me and with other people. Instead of focusing on appearance and aesthetic goals, they began discussing how much better they felt, how much more energy they had, and how proud they were of achieving fitness benchmarks they had never thought possible. Their conversations about health became more positive and encouraging, and they stopped making the kind of critical comments about other people's appearances that had been such a painful part of my childhood. As word spread through their social circle about my parents' success with the transformation program, Elite Fitness Studios began receiving inquiries from many of their friends and business associates. Wealthy, successful people who had previously assumed they were too old or too out of shape to achieve significant fitness improvements were curious about whether the comprehensive approach that had worked for my parents might work for them as well. This referral network proved to be incredibly valuable for business development. Within 6 months of my parents joining the program, we had added over 20 new transformation program clients, most of whom were successful professionals in their 50s and 60s who had been referred by existing clients.
These new clients were typically committed to long-term participation, willing to pay premium rates for comprehensive services, and influential in their own professional and social networks. But the real triumph wasn't the business success or the financial growth that resulted from my parents' participation in the program. The real victory was the fundamental change in how my family saw me and how I saw myself. I was no longer the disappointing daughter who couldn't meet their expectations. I was the successful business owner who had created something valuable enough that even my most critical family members wanted to be part of it. When my parents invited me to join them for dinner after completing their first 12 weeks in the transformation program, the conversation was different than any we had ever had. Instead of subtle criticisms about my appearance or questions about when I was going to find a husband or make better life choices, they asked thoughtful questions about my business strategy, expressed genuine pride in what I had accomplished, and acknowledged that they had underestimated my capabilities for far too long. My mother, who had spent years making suggestions about how I could improve my appearance, apologized for the hurt she had caused and admitted that her own insecurities about aging and social status had led her to project unrealistic expectations onto me. My father, who had always questioned my business judgment and decision-making abilities, acknowledged that I had built something more successful and innovative than anything he had achieved in his own career. But even more satisfying than their apologies and acknowledgments was the recognition that I no longer needed their approval to feel successful or valuable. I had built my own definition of success based on objective achievements, positive impact on other people's lives, and personal growth that went far beyond their narrow focus on appearance and social status. As I looked ahead to the next phase of Elite Fitness Studios' growth and development, I felt confident that I had established a foundation that could support much more ambitious goals.
The business was profitable and growing, the expanded services were meeting real needs in the marketplace, and the team I had assembled was capable of delivering exceptional results for clients across multiple program tracks. But I also knew that the ultimate test of my transformation would come when I was ready to confront Marcus Thompson directly about his role in enabling my family's treatment of me over the years. That confrontation was still to come, and it would determine whether my journey from disappointment to success was truly complete. The day I decided to fire Marcus Thompson arrived exactly 18 months after I purchased Elite Fitness Studios. By then, the business had tripled in revenue, expanded to 5 locations, and gained recognition as the premier fitness company in Los Angeles. I had personally lost 60 pounds, gained more strength and confidence than I ever thought possible, and completely transformed my relationship with my family. But Marcus remained as the final piece of unfinished business from my past. The 6-month transition period we had agreed upon had long since expired, but Marcus had stayed on as head trainer, partly because several high-profile clients specifically requested to continue working with him, and partly because I hadn't been ready to face the confrontation I knew was inevitable. Marcus had built Elite Fitness Studios from nothing, and despite everything he represented about my painful past, I respected what he had accomplished as an entrepreneur and trainer. But I also couldn't ignore the fact that Marcus had been complicit in my family's treatment of me for years. He had listened to countless conversations about my weight and appearance without ever suggesting that their approach was harmful or inappropriate. He had accepted their money while they discussed me like I was a problem to be solved rather than a person deserving of basic respect. The final straw came during a staff meeting where Marcus questioned one of the policy changes I had implemented for the transformation program. The new policy required all trainers to complete sensitivity training focused on working with clients who had experienced weight stigma or body shaming. Marcus argued that this training was unnecessary for experienced professionals and suggested that clients who needed that level of emotional support might be better served by therapists rather than fitness trainers. His dismissive attitude toward the psychological aspects of fitness transformation revealed that he still didn't understand how his passive complicity had enabled years of emotional damage. More importantly, his resistance to policies that would protect future clients from experiencing what I had experienced showed that he hadn't learned anything from watching my successful transformation under his own roof. I scheduled a private meeting with Marcus for the following Friday afternoon at the Beverly Hills location. I wanted to have this conversation in the same space where he had trained my family, where he had listened to their hurtful comments, and where I was now his employer rather than the disappointing daughter he had observed from the sidelines. Marcus arrived for the meeting in his typical athletic wear, looking every bit the successful fitness professional he had always been. He was still physically impressive, still charismatic and confident, still the kind of person who commanded immediate respect in fitness environments. But for the first time in all the years I had known him, I held the power in our relationship. I began the conversation by acknowledging his contributions to Elite Fitness Studios and expressing genuine appreciation for what he had built before I purchased the company. I wanted him to understand that my decision wasn't based on personal animosity or petty revenge, but on fundamental differences in our approaches to client care and business ethics. Then I told him exactly what I had observed during those years when he trained my family. I described the conversations he had witnessed about my weight and appearance, the discussions about how my presence might affect family photos, the constant criticism and subtle cruelty that he had heard without ever speaking up. I explained how his silence had felt like endorsement of their treatment of me, and how his passive complicity had contributed to years of emotional damage that I was still working to overcome. Marcus's initial response was defensive. He argued that his job was to provide fitness training, not to involve himself in family dynamics or personal relationships. He claimed that he had never agreed with my family's comments about my appearance, but that it wasn't his place to interfere in conversations between clients and their family members. But as our conversation continued, I could see that he was beginning to understand the impact of his choices. When I described specific incidents where he had remained silent while my parents made particularly hurtful comments, his defensive posture began to soften. When I explained how his silence had felt like validation of their criticism, he started to recognize how his passive approach had contributed to a harmful situation. I told him about my own transformation over the past 18 months, not just the physical changes, but the emotional and psychological growth that had come from working with trainers and nutritionists who understood the importance of addressing body shame and creating supportive environments for all clients. I described how different my experience had been when working with professionals who saw their role as empowering clients rather than simply providing technical instruction. The conversation lasted over an hour, and by the end Marcus had acknowledged that his approach had been inadequate, and that he should have spoken up when he witnessed harmful interactions. He admitted that he had been uncomfortable with many of the things my family had said about me, but that he had prioritized keeping his clients happy over protecting me from their cruelty. His apology was genuine, and I could see that he finally understood how his passive complicity had contributed to my pain. But understanding and apologizing weren't enough to repair the damage that had been done, and they weren't enough to convince me that he would handle similar situations differently in the future. I informed Marcus that his contract with Elite Fitness Studios would not be renewed, and that his last day of employment would be the following Friday. I offered him a generous severance package and positive references for future employment, but I made it clear that his time working for me had come to an end. Marcus accepted the decision with more grace than I had expected. He thanked me for the opportunity to stay on during the transition period, acknowledged that my reasons for letting him go were valid, and expressed genuine remorse for the role he had played in my family's treatment of me. He even congratulated me on the success I had achieved with Elite Fitness Studios, admitting that the business was now far more successful and impactful than it had been under his ownership. The day Marcus cleaned out his office was one of the most satisfying moments of my entire journey. Watching him pack up his personal belongings, knowing that he was leaving because I had decided he no longer met my standards for employee conduct, felt like the final chapter in my transformation from victim to victor. But the real vindication came in the weeks following Marcus's departure, when several clients who had been working with him chose to continue their memberships with Elite Fitness Studios, rather than following him to whatever venture he pursued next. These clients, including some who had been with Marcus for years, expressed appreciation for the comprehensive approach and supportive environment that Elite Fitness Studios provided. Even more satisfying was the response from my family when they learned that I had fired their former trainer. Instead of questioning my decision or suggesting that Marcus had been unfairly treated, they supported my choice and acknowledged that his passive approach to the hurtful dynamics they had created had been inappropriate. My parents, who were now among Elite Fitness Studios' most successful clients and biggest advocates, told me they were proud of how I had handled the situation. They recognized that my decision to fire Marcus demonstrated the kind of leadership and ethical standards that had made Elite Fitness Studios so much more successful than it had been under his ownership. 6 months after Marcus left, Elite Fitness Studios opened its 6th location and launched a non-profit arm focused on providing fitness and wellness services to underserved communities. The Coleman Foundation, named in honor of my grandmother who had always believed in my potential, offered scholarships for the transformation program and funded fitness facilities in schools and community centers. The business I had built was now generating over $8 million in annual revenue, employed over 40 people, and had helped hundreds of clients achieve health and fitness goals they had never thought possible. More importantly, it had created a culture where every client was valued and supported regardless of their starting point or appearance. My personal transformation was equally dramatic. I had lost 70 pounds, run my first marathon, and gained a level of physical and emotional strength I never knew was possible. But the most significant change was in how I saw myself and how others saw me. I was no longer the disappointing daughter who couldn't meet impossible standards. I was the successful entrepreneur who had built something meaningful from nothing. The wedding photos that had once represented the ultimate humiliation had been replaced by magazine covers featuring me as one of Los Angeles's most successful young entrepreneurs. The family that had once seen me as an embarrassment now introduced me as their accomplished daughter who owned the city's premier fitness company. But the sweetest revenge wasn't their changed attitude or public recognition of my success. The sweetest revenge was no longer needing their approval to feel valuable or accomplished. I had built my own definition of success based on objective achievements, positive impact on other people's lives, and personal growth that went far beyond their narrow focus on appearance and social status. When people ask me what advice I would give to someone who has been dismissed or underestimated because of their appearance, I tell them this: the best revenge is not just proving them wrong, but building something so impressive that their opinions become irrelevant. Success isn't about earning approval from people who are determined not to give it. Success is about creating value in the world while becoming the person you were always capable of being. Today, Elite Fitness Studios continues to grow and evolve, serving clients who range from celebrities and executives to busy professionals who once felt excluded from premium fitness services. The transformation program has helped over 500 people achieve dramatic health improvements, and the corporate wellness division works with dozens of companies to improve employee health and productivity. As for Marcus Thompson, I heard he started his own training business, focusing on athletes and fitness competitors. I wish him well. Some people change when confronted with their mistakes, others simply find new environments where their old approaches still work. Either way, his choices are no longer my concern. My family relationships have been permanently transformed by everything that happened. We still gather for holidays and celebrations, but the dynamics are completely different. Instead of subtle criticism and disappointment, our conversations focus on business achievements, family milestones, and shared interests. Instead of being the family member they wish they could edit out of photos, I'm the one they proudly introduce to their friends and business associates. The most important lesson I learned throughout this journey is that transformation is possible at any age, and from any starting point, but it requires commitment to change from the inside out, rather than just trying to meet other people's expectations. Real success comes from building something valuable while becoming someone you respect, regardless of whether anyone else notices or approves. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.